Oh, the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me. I'm gonna beat my sword
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword
Gonna beat my sword
into a plow.
into a plow.
Gonna beat my sword into a plow. Christ is king in my life now. May his peace begin with me.
Good morning. My name is John Jones, and I'm the camp manager of Camp Myrtlewood, Church of the Brethren Church Camp in Southern Oregon. And we're standing in the creek basin just below our bridge at the swimming hole where kids swim in the summertime. And we are wanting to talk to you just a little bit about our Stewardship of Creation project here at Camp Myrtlewood. For 19 years now, while I've been camp manager, we've been talking as a camp board and as people who love Camp Myrtlewood about the need for us to have a stewardship plan. We have about 160 acres of land that we are responsible for and to live in right relationship with, as we believe God wants us to do. And so we have finally, after 19 years, started getting our act together, and we're working on a stewardship project which includes an ecoforestry component, an educational component, and the latest project that we're working on, which is related to our eco-stewardship plan, is a stream restoration project. And you can hear some chainsaws once in a while, and we're going to be showing you stream restoration in action in this video. But that's not all of what our project is all about. Our Stewardship of Creation plan is a long-term plan that will go on for years and years after we are gone. And in a nutshell, what we're working on is to help create a healthy ecosystem and to maintain a healthy ecosystem that is based on a concept of an old growth forest that is 7 generations of Douglas fir at 60 years a generation. That's 420 years. It's long after I'm gone and others who are living today will be gone, but we believe that what we do today is important to the future of creation, and that God wants us to live in right relationship with our fellow human beings and with God, and that is part of that is living in right relationship with nature. So that's what this video is all about. Just a group of people who love the creation in which they live and who want to live in right relationship with it.
Salmon populations are lower than historical levels for a variety of reasons, some of which are beyond our control, some of which are within our control. One of the things that's within our control is the freshwater habitat that they use during the portion of their life that they're spending in the streams and rivers before they go out to the ocean. Here in Myrtle Creek, we have Chinook salmon, coho salmon, steelhead salmon, and cutthroat trout all spawning and rearing in different portions of the watershed. Here at Camp Myrtlewood, we are below the location of where there was a splash dam in the 19-teens. And splash damming was at its time a very clever, efficient way to transport logs from up in the hills down to the mills in the coastal towns. What they used to do is they would dam up the river, build a little dam out of logs and wood and so forth, and store up pond-up water upstream of that dam. And when they had enough logs behind that dam, and when the creek started to rise, they would pull the plug on that dam, so to speak, and all that water, all those logs, and everything would just rip-roar and torrent down through the stream, down through Myrtle Creek, down to the middle fork of the Coquille, and then on down to the head of tide at Myrtle Point. And from there, they might be milled in Myrtle Point, or Coquille, or Bandon, or wherever. What was a very efficient way to transport logs was also pretty detrimental to the natural stream habitat that was there. Prior to releasing this splash dam, they would go ahead and clear out any large boulders or any large accumulations of wood that were in the stream so that logs wouldn't hang up on those on those boulders or logs wouldn't in any way be impeded from just blowing on down the stream. And then of course when they did pull the plug on the splash dam, remaining logs, boulders, everything down to even gravel would just be flushed on out. And what we're left with in a lot of Myrtle Creek is a bedrock stream channel or stream bed, or a stream bed which is really dominated by very large, hard to move things like smaller boulders and cobble and so forth. What we don't see a lot of in Myrtle Creek is gravel that's about the size of my fist, which is about the size of gravel that salmon like to spawn in. And also what we don't see a lot of in Myrtle Creek is a lot of large wood like the piece that I'm sitting on. Again, these pieces of wood were removed prior to splash damming. Old logging practices didn't really protect stream banks very much, so trees could be logged right off the banks. The old-timers would run heavy equipment up and down the stream beds as a yarding corridor to move the logs, and of course grazing, you often have grazing right up to the edge of the stream, so you don't have the chance for trees to grow. So my job, and my job for the past 9 years, has been to do projects like this where we are restoring the natural building blocks of habitat back to the streams. We're putting the large wood back into the streams, which is missing now or in low abundance now. We're going to be putting some boulders back in here, which are missing or in low abundance now. And the idea is, as I said, to feed the stream the raw materials to make its own habitat. We're not going to try and micro-engineer habitat. We're just going to feed it the raw materials and let it build its own habitat to improve spawning habitat for the adults that come in and dig their nests in the gravel for the eggs, and then also improve the rearing habitat. After the fry hatch out of the eggs, they spend anywhere from a few weeks to a few months to even a few years in these streams before going out to the ocean. Here at Camp Myrtlewood, we're doing an especially exciting project. We're taking 9 trees from a particularly healthy riparian stand of trees, riparian meaning streamside, and we're pulling those trees over much like a windstorm would push, or throw a tree over in a windstorm. And we are positioning those trees in the stream at 2 sites. So we're going to have 5 trees at one site, 4 trees at another site. It was a really interesting process we went through in selecting those trees. My motto is don't rob Peter to pay Paul. We don't necessarily want to take a tree to improve salmon habitat at the expense of the habitat value that tree is providing up on the hill slope. So we selected our trees, one, so that they would be big enough and stable enough to serve the purpose that we're looking for in the stream. So big enough to trap gravel, trap other pieces of driftwood, trap spawned out salmon carcasses, keep those nutrients in the food chain here in the stream. Big enough to scour pools into the gravel that we collect. Also big enough to stay put. Myrtle Creek is a relatively large stream, so these have to be relatively large trees. In fact, we have some rules of thumbs. However wide the stream runs during winter flows, the tree has to be 1.5 times that width in its length with its root wad still attached. If the root wad weren't attached, we could have it be twice as long. So in this case, Myrtle Creek runs about 70 feet wide during winter flows from bank to bank. So the trees that we have are all 110 feet long with the root wad still attached. So it's almost like Paul Bunyan picked up the tree, root wads and all, and placed them in the stream. In reality, Paul Bunyan is a gentleman named Mark Villers, and his company is called Blue Ridge Timber Cutting, and he is an exceptionally experienced contractor who is very conscientious about protecting the riparian resources, the stream resources, and the upslope resources, so that, again, we don't rob Peter to pay Paul.
When I was a little kid, these creeks had a lot of wood in them when I was 6 or 8 years old, and we used to go fish in these streams like this. And we'd find these old wood jams, and that's where the good fishing would be. And then I was about mid-60s, and that's just about the time they started cleaning them out, thinking that all that wood was bad. So they spent 2 or 3 decades cleaning that wood out, and then figured out that it made a mistake, that the wood was actually a huge part of the biology of the stream, and the life of the fish really had a lot to do with how much wood was there, because of all the reasons that the wood, is good for them. The gravel, there's just a huge list of things that make wood good for streams. So when they started putting it back, I really got involved because I remembered how good the fishing was when the wood was there. I remembered the connection. I'm old enough just to see that, and so I wanted to get involved. And so seven summers ago, I started putting wood in And every summer, this is what I do.
Right now we're digging holes around the tree, so far out in front of the tree, so we can blast them with dynamite so it loosens the roots up. So there's no chance that we'll break the tree off at the base, because the root wall is very important as far as in the creek. So the hole digging process is kind of a long, boring process, but it's got to be done.
The roots give us a lot more value structurally for the project than just the tree only would, because you have that big knobby root, and this one or that one's going to go with the roots in the water. Some will go roots in the water, some will go roots on the bank, and these aren't even 150 tall, so we couldn't even use them at all without the roots on. Okay, we just set off these 4 charges to try to soften the ground up, loosen the soil around the roots, so that when we pull on the tree it won't bust off at the ground level. It'll actually get the roots with the tree. And it exposes any obstacles, like we have a really huge root here that's straight in line with our pull. So we'll have to cut that, because even if we didn't, it would try to bust it and it would end up not being part of the tree. But sometimes that big of a root straight in line can actually split the tree way up. So we want to avoid that at all costs, even though we have to sacrifice some roots. But there's no way we would end up with that much root anyway, since it's the root straight in line. The roots that'll be the longest will be out here in the back. As it tips over, they'll heave out of the ground.
Hold that and lock your main line and just hold that for a second.
This is a tree puller. We got all kinds of levers here to run the cables. We got a main line that we do most of our pulling with. It's our strongest cable. Goes through a level line and then through a fair lead, so it goes off the truck smooth. The level line gets it on the drum nice and evenly, so it don't get all bound up and have problems. We got a haulback, which is behind the main line. The fair lead is above the main line fair lead. We use it for a little bit faster pulls, or if we want to pull from 2 different directions. We have a hay wire over there. If we got to pull out a whole lot of line going way out there, several hundred feet or so, then we'll pull the hay wire out, take it backwards the way you want to run your main line, and hook it on, and I'll take in the hay wire. Therefore it's pulling out the main line, so the guys don't have to bust their energy on pulling out the main line.
If you want to, when he starts pulling hard, call a stop fairly fast, unless it's really veering way off. Yeah. Because less chance of busting it if we let it go a little slower.
Gotcha. See it now, guys?
Yeah.
Reeling fast.
Just perfect. Just perfect.
when we felled this large tree here with the cables, the point was to miss this double red cedar here and to miss this. Well, it looks impossible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I was thinking at the time, the only way it could possibly be done would be to really crowd the red cedar, risking smashing it in order to save the broadleaf maple, which is a real good animal habitat tree, you see. So I said a little prayer, which I think helped. Of course, the fine expertise of these men doing the rigging is also a big part of it. But anyhow, with the prayer and the good rigging, that big tree came down, just barely skinned that tree, didn't take any bark off or anything off of the cedar, and it completely missed this one, just breaking out a couple of the limbs. So both trees came out in beautiful condition. And then again, with good rigging, look what they're doing now. I mean, just to me, it's an amazing thing. One tree a day. If this was being logged, they would have had this done about 3 days ago, and they'd be just pulling out logs now. But this, of course, isn't logging. It's stream restoration. There's a major difference.
Wow. But this is the bell, so it's kind of a handy thing, because to choke this log, you need something that'll slide and get tight, or it'll just come off. But then when you're done, you want to be able to unhook it fast. So they came up with this years and years ago, and you just put that nub in there and go like that, and then it'll choke itself tight.
How much? 23?
Yeah, I said, well, I want one of them ones I've heard about that do your riders at the same time.
We're complaining.
Here's another little tactic, guys.
There's always better, you know there is. There's always better.
Always.
I think we're ready to pull, so anywhere over up in here would be great.
What? 10 of those for a house? Yeah.
That drum does not look very good.
Yeah. As long as it's in a half-root print, showed it up.
Hold back. Go ahead on your haul back. What? Stop. Standing by.
I'm starting to pull up the hill, so as much as I can keep that bent, it can help that come out.
Stop.
It'll bend fine, I think. As long as I don't...
The only bad thing about that eye, big eye, it gets hung up.
Well, it's got a kink in it now, though.
I know.
Stop.
Pulley, a block is a pulley. That's our slang for a pulley. A logging block on that tree and reroute. We're in the middle of rerouting our cables right now. And then once we're all done with that, we'll be able to get the tree that much farther. Then we'll stop and have to re-rig the cables again. And we have to do that every time we make a turn. So it's a pretty complicated thing to get the entire tree, roots and all, from where it was growing to where we want it for the fish habitat.
Stop.
I may stop him and let him try it again.
You'd be more likely to get it while it's moving, though.
Nah. Stop.
this great big old tree over here with a root wad has rolled down the hill as we've pulled it toward the creek, and it's up against some ash trees that we don't want to damage. So we're wanting to pull it this way, and we've been trying to pull it on a straight pole to the rig, to the tree puller. But that straight pole didn't have enough power, so we're going to rig up a purchase. A purchase incorporates a block where you run your line down to the tree and then back through the block and then back to the tree and pull on the tree. And that way you increase your pulling strength by almost 100%. It's actually about 85% increase in efficiency. By putting a purchase on it, you're not just doing a straight pull, you're getting the advantage of another block, and you get 85% more pull. It really makes a big difference. Focus the shift to the body.
Hold the two halves together.
All right.
Hey, Howard.
Hey, Mark.
Walk this way. I'll hand you this eye,
All right.
and if you want to head straight towards that white cedar.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is putting the purchase.
This eye. Perfect. It even went up. I agree with John. It's perfect.
Is it?
Let me check the top.
It bounced way up the creek on that last pole.
Yeah, sweet.
Took another 5-foot hop. It's going.
Just for the record, out of 7 years, that's the closest to the impossible. That's the hardest I've ever done right there, that long.
And what I've heard with contractors say, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. Well, let's just try, let's just try. Hey, we did it. But Mark never said he couldn't do this. He never said that. Yeah, we figured it out. So
that
yeah,
was like the closest. I mean, my record before was all day on one tree. This was 2 days on one tree, so we broke our record for the slowest ever.
but that's 2 days. This site was intended to improve both spawning and rearing habitat, and it looks like it's doing an excellent job of doing both of those things. When you look at the stream, you'll notice upstream of where the trees and the boulders are, the water, while it's still flowing fairly swiftly at this high flow, it's flowing much more slowly than it is downstream of the logs and of the boulders. The trees and the boulders are doing a really great job of checking the energy of the stream. They're slowing the water velocity, as you can see, and what that's resulting in is the juvenile fish are having a much easier time maintaining their position against these swift flows and not being flushed out to the salt water before their bodies are ready to adapt to the salt water. And also, by checking the energy of the stream, it's allowing spawning size gravel to settle out instead of being flushed on through. And so we're building up that spawning gravel, which is improving the spawning habitat for the adult fish, and also making it so we can scour deeper pools into that gravel. The objective of this site was to improve rearing habitat for juvenile fish, more so than trying to improve spawning habitat for adult fish. Research has shown that in larger streams like this, where juvenile fish, and in particular juvenile coho salmon, find refuge from fast flows is along the edge of the stream, hugging the bank. So what we've done here is we've placed in 3 trees with the root rods in the water and 5 clusters of 5 boulders each to try and provide that edge rearing habitat. As you're looking out in the stream, if you look on the far side of the stream, you see fairly fast, swift water flowing downstream. But when you look at where the stream is flowing around the trees and the boulders, you'll see that the water just downstream of those trees and boulders is very, 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 very slack water. It's very slow water. It looks like just a pond or a pool. So what's happening is the fish that are rearing in the stream are getting out of that fast water that you see on the far side and hugging the bank in the shadow of those trees with their root wads in the boulders and finding refuge from the fast flows there. In order to maximize the stability of the logs, or the trees I should say, the trees are 1.5 times in length the width of the stream at its bankful flows, which you're seeing now. So Myrtle Creek is running 70 feet wide, and the trees with their root wads still attached are 110 feet long or even longer in some cases. And in order to further increase the stability of the trees, we threaded them, basically just like thread through a needle, through trees that are standing here in the riparian area, so that they're wedged in and locked, and as the stream current flows and pushes against them, it just turns them and locks them tighter into the trees that they're threaded through up here on the bank.
I'm John Jones again, just a little older and a little grayer. But I'm standing here on the banks of Myrtle Creek on a beautiful sunny summer day in July. I'm at the first stream restoration site that we put in, where we put in the 5 big logs and about 50 boulders. And what it has done is very much changed the stream base of this stream. If you remember from the old film, there was one great big long gravel bar and the fish never spawned on it. Now this gravel bar is very complex. The stream base is a much more complex stream base with lots of little rivulets all through the gravel and grass growing here and there. We've seen fish spawning on this in the last 10 years. In fact, we saw them the first Christmas after it was put in September of 2002. By Christmas time, we had fish spawning down here. It was amazing. And downstream, we have another site, if you remember, and that site has served a different purpose. It created, basically, instead of just slowing the stream, it created a real big back eddy where small juvenile fish could come in behind the logs and rest. And it has also created, what we didn't plan for it to create, but it has a Lamprey Eel Nursery. And one of the U.S. Forest Service employees, who is a biologist and a specialist in lampreys, was just so tickled when he came to this second site, found all these little baby lamprey eels. That was really a bonus. So this stream restoration really has worked. Across the creek, and another place in the film here, we'll see where some slides have occurred, because at the same time that we put this in, there was a clear cut, if you remember. A logging company was putting in a clear cut across the stream. And that clear cut resulted in a lot of the water not being held back by the trees from the hillside, and it washed out some of our land that's on the other side of the creek. Right directly across the creek from us is camp's land, but just above it is where this big clear cut is. But in one sense, those slides have really been a positive thing. They've been negative in the sense of bringing in a lot of silt in the wintertime, but they've also brought in more gravel, and they've brought some trees, which are our trees. They happen to be on that side of the stream across, which has created more natural structure. Like we put in artificially, we now have natural blowdowns coming from the other side of the creek. Mother Nature put it there, and it's really beautiful. It's been very effective and very welcome as far as the fish are concerned.
The path he trod,
The path he trod.
all those who tread the path he trod shall be called the friends of God. May his peace begin with me. Oh, the Jesus way
Oh, the Jesus way
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way
Oh, the Jesus way
is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin